Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for the fourth and final part of the Q&As. Got my hat on already, so let's jump to it. Jason, I find wide grip pull-ups cause tendinitis to flare up in my elbows. Consequently, I now use an attachment that allows for a neutral grip at shoulder width. Would there be any benefits, aesthetically or performance-based, to widening the neutral grip handles? If so, what's the benefit? I don't like wide grip pull-ups. I don't like wide grip chin-ups. I think that they're bad for various joints. Like you're noticing you're having tendinitis in your elbow. I think the wider the grip you go on any sort of pull-up or chin-up, I think that it runs a higher risk of damaging your shoulders. Furthermore, the reason people do it is because a lot of bodybuilders have been given this wrong impression that the wider you go, it gives you wider lats. So therefore, if you go wider, it must make your lats wider. No, stimulating your lats makes them wider. All right. There's no way with lats, because of the way they're shaped, to focus more upon their width versus thickness. They just grow. When people talk about getting a thicker back, that's because they're building the traps more, they're building the thoracic erectors and all that stuff more. That's what makes the back thicker beyond what the same stuff that makes it wider does. The problem with the wider grip is that you remove the bicep more. And again, a lot of guys are like, well, I want to remove the bicep more because I want more back. But that doesn't mean you're going to get more back. Just because the bicep works less just means that the bicep grows less. It doesn't mean the lats are going to grow more, because here's what you're doing. You're also reducing the range of motion to take the biceps out. So the biceps being removed because they're really strong in a strong position in all these pulling exercises like that, removing the biceps is actually going to reduce the amount of weight you can use. Because then the lats are doing more of the work and the biceps less, but it doesn't mean the lats are working harder, because you've shortened down the range of motion and sometimes have to use a slightly lighter weight. So yeah, the biceps get used less, but it's not necessarily causing the lats to develop more. But it does put you at a greater risk of a shoulder injury. I like to see narrow grip on almost every single pulling exercise for the back. I think that's the best way to develop the best back overall, because that longer range of motion makes everything work harder, and it does so with less strain on your shoulders. And less strain on your shoulders means less injuries, less inflammation, more time progressing in your training. But that's just my opinion on that. All right, next question. Hey Jason, most of the intermediate periodization programs usually have the person doing one of the 4 big lifts one day, then using a variation on a lighter version as an assistance movement on the other days. How beneficial would adding in a third light squat, press, and pull sometime during the week be in resparking protein synthesis, and how heavy would it have to be to do so? Thanks. Generally speaking, it depends on what sort of workloads you want to use. Usually, if you want to just make sure that the lighter exercise is resparking protein synthesis, causing muscle growth, which is usually your goal. What you need to remember, every exercise, the factors that determine how strong you get on it are how big the muscles are involved in it, as well as the motor patterns and muscle fiber recruitment patterns involved due to the neural efficiency. Well, a lot of the other comes from, 1, lifting heavy weights for the neural efficiency, and 2, the motor pattern of doing the exercise. The other exercises all contribute to what? The muscle growth. They contribute to the muscle growth and sometimes bringing up weak angles, because if you change something, like let's say you go to a front squat from a back squat, it does change the priorities and loads a little bit. And it can sometimes help bring up some weak links from a hypertrophy perspective. So that's the whole point of why you're doing these variations, is to help bring up possible weak links in the exercise or the variation of it, just in terms of size, muscle size. But what does it take? Usually 70% of your max. Unless you want to go with really, really high reps, then it doesn't matter. Or if you're going to do speed work for it, you could go lower. But if you're wanting to do ultra high reps as a form of hypertrophy for it, you could go much lighter. But generally, if you're going to do basic work sets, like you're going to work anywhere between 5 and 10 reps, about 70% of your max will do it. And yeah, you could do 8 rep sets. 8 rep sets with 70% of your max. And a lot of people are like, well, you should be able to do that with 75 or in some cases 80%. Yeah, you can. But you don't need to go to failure on these assistance exercises. It's not necessarily beneficial. You're just trying to re-stimulate some muscle protein synthesis. Couple sets of 8 reps with 70% of your max, say 3 sets of 8 with 70%, on an accessory exercise done in the middle of the week is more than enough to stimulate additional growth and respark the muscle protein synthesis from that previous training. In fact, you could go as low as 5 rep sets with 70%. It really varies as far as what you could do, but you could go that low, but I'd lean in the direction, depending on what your programming looks like, doing some sets of 8 wouldn't be bad either. That's the best way you could do that if you wanted to throw in just an extra day for accessory exercises that doesn't seriously tax your recovery, because that's what you're looking at, is not taxing your recovery. And doing sets of 5 to 8 reps with 70% stimulates just enough muscle protein synthesis without hammering your recovery further. So, I'd kind of lean in that direction. All right, next question. I train upper lower 4 days a week. I enjoy variation, so I only squat, bench, overhead press, and deadlift once each week. The other sessions I do variations like front squat, incline, closed grip, Romanian deadlifts. Is this enough to get stronger in the basic lifts and put on muscle? I would like to think that the variations have some carryover. Thanks, I appreciate all your work. I actually kind of answered this in the last question. I didn't realize that I forgot these two were back to back when I picked them real quick. A lot of the answer is the same. All right, your strength components are going to be neural learning and muscle mass. That's your two big components. If you gain muscle, you get stronger on a lift if those muscles are involved. If you get better at the movement pattern by practicing it and getting stronger and faster and better at it, you also get stronger. Those two combine together to give you the amount of strength that you have on a lift. Pretty straightforward. Yes, the accessory movements carry over in the sense that they add muscle mass, meaning the Romanian deadlift is going to put meat on your hamstrings and glutes and your lower back. Will that carry over to your deadlift? Yeah, particularly if those are weak links in your deadlift. If any of those muscles are a weak link that are limiting your deadlift, yes, they will improve your deadlift if they get bigger from doing the Romanian deadlift. The motor pattern and the focus is tremendously different. So the motor unit learning on the Romanian carries over very, very little to the conventional deadlift. Very little, because the exercises are so different. But a lot of the muscles involved aren't. And so, yeah, bringing up those muscles can improve your deadlift. So we use that one as the example here. However, as far as getting stronger on the other end, it's going to depend on how much volume you're putting into that one day. If you really, really want to get strong on any of these big basic exercises, you are going to need to do enough volume and workload and reps to make that happen. So if you're only going to bench press once a week, you probably need to do a fair amount of volume on the bench press in order to learn the motor patterns. But it sounds like you're almost doing a concurrent type periodization. And so if you wanted to get stronger on the big lifts, I might recommend that you do low reps on the big lifts. You could do high sets. You could do sets at 3, but you could do 7 to 10 sets at 3. All right, that's going to give you a lot of first reps, and it's going to give you fairly heavy weight on the big exercises. It's going to improve you getting really strong and really powerful on those big exercises. You could do the others purely as hypertrophy work, meaning you could come in and then on your incline bench and Romanian deadlift and all that day, you could do higher reps. You could work up in the 8 to 10 rep range or 12 rep range on those days, on those exercises, so that you gain more hypertrophy in all those muscle groups involved, so that it will have carryover. And that might be the way to do it if you really wanted to switch it up the way that you're doing, because it sounds like you're trying to do a form of concurrent periodization anyways. And that would probably be the best way to make it happen. Just do it like that. All right, next question and last question of the week. Hi Jason, what's your take on why so many bodybuilders struggle to have a tight midsection these days compared to the great physiques of the past? I know bodybuilding is not your thing, to say the least, but I would still be interested in your opinion. Many thanks. I think the bulking and cutting that they do, combined with a lot of the drugs that they use, is really to blame. I think that's why a lot of them struggle with it. And a lot of it has to do with it's harder to have a tight midsection when you've got extra visceral fat, because they use a lot of things like IGF-1, they use a lot of insulin. All these drugs can really cause a lot of fat accumulation around your organs. In some cases, even concerns of potential organ growth. That's going to make it harder to have a tighter midsection in general. All right, that's just going to be a big problem. Also, the bulking and cutting. I have loose skin problems. I gained 100 pounds of fat when I was sick in bed. I consequently lost that 100 pounds of fat, but guess what? My skin looks like hammered fucking dog shit. To the point to where people get mad when I take my shirt off. They think that it's extra fat sometimes there when I have loose skin around there. Loose skin's a bitch to tighten up. I would know. So that being said, think about that for a minute. Some of these guys gain 50 or 60 pounds over their contest weight. Look at guys like Arnold. Yeah, Arnold got fatter, but they used to grow into shows. These guys didn't get 30 or 50 pounds over their contest weight in the off season, did they? Some of them even were smaller. Some of them were 5 or 10 pounds lighter. And even the ones who were bigger, they only lost about 15 pounds sometimes. 10, 15, 20 pounds tops to get into contest shape. That's not a lot of skin stretching and shrinking. All right? That's not a lot of skin stretching and shrinking. So it's harder to have abdominal definition and definition in general around your midsection when your skin isn't as tight. It can blur those lines no matter what. It can be harder to see the definition even when you're leaner. So these guys, some of these guys are getting 50 and 60 pounds over their contest weight and then having to cut down. They're going to have problems with skin elasticity around their midsection because of that. And I think that's a big factor as well. Probably one of the biggest factors there. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.